Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush. I'm E.J Hradek, joined today by Pierre McGuire. We're right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember to like and subscribe. We're always here for you. A lot of great content. And Pierre, free agent frenzy. They always say free agent frenzy. I think there was really a free agent frenzy in Toronto because of all the teams yesterday. The Toronto Maple Leafs, John Shaika, he was shiking it up with that team. I mean, all kinds of new
Yeah.
players. What did you make of the big picture of what John Shaika tried to do on the opening day of free agency?
I think he really started it with Darren Radish when he got Darren Radish from Tampa, EJ, when you think about it. And then obviously they bring in Emile Andre as well and Samuel Ersson. Eventually they move Ersson to Ottawa. They keep Emile Andre, a puck-moving defenseman. But I love what they did. One of the things, and I don't know how much you've talked about it, I know how many shows you're on, but Bobrovsky, 2 Stanley Cups. Nick Paul, 2 Stanley Cups. Teddy Bluger, 1 Stanley Cup. Colton Sissons, 2 trips to the Stanley Cup final with different teams, Nashville and Vegas. Jack Roslovic, a trip to the final with the Edmonton Oilers. And then they bring in Brandon Duhaime, who's played a lot of playoff games, and Zach McEwen, who's very familiar with Jim Hiller from their time in LA. So you look at all the additions, I think it actually makes a lot of sense. That's a team that's been devoid of a lot of Stanley Cup winning experience. So when you look at it, they brought in 5 Stanley Cup rings, 2 trips to the finals with one player, and another trip to the final with another player. I think it's really good what they've done in Toronto.
Yeah, I like the fact that he has come in and not waited around. I mean, like they need to make some decisions and to get involved, and they certainly have. Let me ask you about Bobrovsky because I mean that's the biggest one that we've
Right.
seen. There was, a little. I guess for me, there was a little surprise why they couldn't work that out in Florida. In the end, they couldn't. Perhaps it was the term. He wanted the 3 years. Florida probably didn't want to go there. They end up with Markstrom from New Jersey, 2 years times $6 million. Bobrovsky comes to Toronto now. He reunites with Anthony Stolarz. They were a duo that helped Florida win a Stanley Cup, the first of those 2 cups for the Panthers. And you know, I just think their goaltending is more solid now. Bobrovsky's older, but he keeps himself in great shape for sure. He's going to be 38 before the season starts. But in the past with Stolarz, who I like Anthony Stolarz a lot, but he gets hurt and he misses time. Joseph Wall would miss time. Bobrovsky's going to be there most nights. That's what history tells us. And, I think that's a much better team. Plus, with Akhtiamov on the way down in the minors, that is a really good mentor situation for Bobrovsky. Both countrymen, both Russians. He can help that young goalie down the road.
You just nailed it, my friend. That's why I was waving my finger. I was doing a way to go, EJ. You're
Yeah.
right on it. So the biggest thing about that is that Toronto's farm team is obviously in Toronto. The Marlies just won the Calder Cup, the Stanley Cup for the American Hockey League. And so they're going to live near one another. They're going to be able to hang out. And who's to say that Akhtiamov doesn't even get an opportunity to play for Toronto with the Maple Leafs?
Yeah,
So I
he
think
already
it's
has
great
played
on
a few,
Bobrovsky. Yeah, he already has. And quite frankly, I think Bobrovsky's still got plenty of game left. I really
Yeah.
do. He has not been a guy that's been decimated by injury or anything else over the course of his career. He really cares. And he's going to a hockey market, and he's bringing a lot of street cred with him. We talked about his 2 Stanley Cups, but let's also remember 3 straight trips to the Stanley Cup final. So it's not like he doesn't have experience. He's got plenty of experience.
Yeah, I just think it's a much steadier group there in terms of the goaltending. I already saw a clip, by the way. I don't know if you saw this, Pierre, but when the Panthers and Leafs played late in the season, Akhtiamov was on the Leafs,
Yeah.
and they came together with Bobrovsky, and they had it's a very animated conversation at center ice. It looked very, very positive.
Yeah, I did see that clip actually. It's a great point by you, EJ, again. And I totally agree with the mentorship side of this. I think it's really important. I'll use as an example in Montreal. Now they've got Demidov signed long term.
Yeah.
Zorovsky is there as well. They're using Demidov as a mentor for Zorovsky, who's one of their first round picks from a year ago. So again, this mentorship stuff really does matter. I think teams are getting wiser to that. And I think it's really smart with what Toronto's done. I was surprised that Bobrovsky didn't end up in Los Angeles because of his relationship with Panarin, but I give Toronto a lot of credit. They really must have done something unbelievable in the recruitment process because that's a real good player who's going to give them a lot of big games. It's going to make Toronto very relevant in the Eastern Conference.
I want to touch on what you just said about the recruitment process. I'm a big believer. I mean, there's 32 teams now. You have to sell players on your plan and on your passion for success. And listen, if I don't know how this is all going to play out, Pierre, over the next 12, 24 months. But one thing is for sure, I mean, they are selling guys on the plan there, and I think that is a big plus. How important is that to you?
Hugely important. And it's not just going to be for professional players because of the relationship between major junior hockey now and college hockey right now. A lot of these players who you've seen get drafted in the fourth round, the fifth round, the sixth round, the seventh round, a lot of those guys are going to come down from major junior. They're not going to put up the big numbers that everybody expects them to. They're not going to get signed by the teams that draft him. And eventually they're going to go back into the pool and they're going to have to be recruited into organizations, maybe starting in the East Coast League, maybe starting in the American Hockey League, but they're going to have to be recruited again to a professional organization. Teams that are wise enough to understand the importance of the recruitment process you're talking about, those are the teams going forward that are really going to thrive, both at the professional level and at the level just below the NHL, because recruitment's going to be a big part of this going forward.
Yeah, you gotta sell your plan. You gotta show the
Yeah.
passion of that you think you're you have a plan for success and you're going to be able to win. I think that's what attracts people to your organization. So they've certainly done a lot of that in these first couple of months of the Shaika era, so to speak, as the new manager in Toronto. Let me go through some of these forwards with you and get your
Yep.
thoughts. I'll start with Roslovic because he's 29 years old. They got him 2 years times 4 million. He's someone that apparently has a relationship with Austin Matthews going back to the U.S. program.
Yes.
Give me your
Yep.
thoughts on how he fits.
He fits well. He's probably a 20 to 25 goal scorer. That's his thing. He's not as much of a playmaker as he's a pure finisher. Kid from Columbus, Ohio. He does have a relationship with Austin Matthews from USA Hockey. I think that's a positive thing, not a negative thing.
Mhm.
And I think he's a guy that's going to give him a lot of depth offense. And he's a good insurance plan. What people in Toronto aren't talking enough about, how hurt and how long will Max Domi be out of the lineup?
Yeah.
And if he's out long term or can never get back to where he used to be, Roslovic is a tremendous insurance plan.
How about Colton Sissons? We just saw him in the Cup final for the Vegas Golden Knights, a long time with the Nashville Predators. You mentioned it. He was part of different teams that went to the Cup final on two different occasions. Unfortunately for him, they didn't get all the way through. Lost in six with Vegas, lost in six with Nashville. But he is one of those guys, again, that you could move around your lineup. He's an experienced guy. He could take faceoffs. 2 years times 4.25 million. Again, I think reasonable.
Very smart signing. And the biggest thing about Colton Sissons, when you bring him in, you're getting pure character and coachability. He's a guy that's not going to go on stray from your game plan. He's a guy that's going to buy into what the coaching staff is selling. I always thought, and I said this to Kyle last week, everybody's talking about a top six forward in Toronto and more defense. I agree, but they got to identify the need for a third center and a need for a fourth center. And they've done that. Colton Sisson can play in the 3-hole, but in this case, I think he's probably going to play in the 4-hole because of the acquisition of Nick Paul. But here's the biggest thing. You lose Scott Lawton, you trade him away to LA. You trade away Nicky Dubois to Colorado. So now you got this huge void internally in the 3-4 hole, and now you've kind of fixed it with Colton Sisson at a very digestible rate, very digestible.
And then you mentioned Nick Paul. I mean, 31 years of age. He has 3 years left on his deal at
Yeah.
3.15. Again, I think pretty manageable. And he brings that winning experience to Toronto.
I worked with Nicky when I was in Ottawa as part of the management team there. Think the world of him as a person. Really respect him as a player. He will go in there and be very, very popular. He's an Ontario kid, big body, playoff kind of proven player. Won't cause any problems. Will affiliate with the star players and lesser than star players. He's just a tremendous guy. He's a glue guy. He brings guys together. He's a tremendous person. Can't say enough good things about him. So I think that was a really smart acquisition. Again, Stanley Cup winning pedigree. He's won 2 cups. He's been in the final 3 times.
And they bring in Brandon Duhaime on a 3-year contract, 29 years old, 2.6 million against the cap. And I guess they bring him in as a guy that can stir it up down on the fourth line. He brings a physical nature to their team to go along with guys like Dakota Joshua. What did you make of that one?
Most underrated part of his game. You talked about all that physicality and the skating. He's a big person that can really get around the ice. I watched him play at Providence College forever for Nate Lehman. But here's the biggest thing about him. He is maybe the most underrated penalty killer in the National Hockey League. EJ, he's a tremendous penalty killer, like elite. And so I think that's where he's going to make a big impact. It's not about points with him. People are going to look at his stat line and they're going to say, come on, what are we doing with this guy here? He can't get points. It's not about points with this guy. It's about how he can intimidate opposition defense. He finishes every check. He can really skate, and his penalty killing is way better than anybody knows.
And then Teddy Bluger, who comes in, another kind of, veteran journeyman type player, 2 years, 2.5, 31 years of age. When he's healthy, he's a good fourth line player.
He's versatile as all get out. Your point is well taken. He can play center. He can play wing. First time I ever saw him play, he was playing college hockey in Minnesota. He's just one of those guys that got great hockey IQ. I know he's a little bit older. He might be about a half a gear slow compared to what he used to be. He's not overly large, but he's hockey strong, a little bit like Sergei Bobrovsky, a guy you know very well, obviously from New Jersey. He's not as good, obviously, but similar characteristics to Breland. Here's the biggest thing that I like about him. He played with Dakota Joshua in Vancouver.
Yeah.
People don't talk about that. And those guys were really formidable together when they had a chance to get some consistency playing, especially for Rick Tocchet. So I would say people are going to be surprised how well he fits in. He's going to be a penalty killer. He's going to be a depth scorer. He can play the wing and play center. I think Teddy was, and he's a cup winner. Teddy was a good pickup, real good pickup.
Yeah. And they decided to keep Troy Stetcher at 2 years, 1.35 million, 32 years old. Still gets around pretty good on the ice. He's not the biggest guy. Right shot defenseman. Came in last year and helped them off waivers from Edmonton. Again, a very it's a lower end contract with the salary cap coming up. But I mean, they always say, Pierre, right? You never have enough defensemen.
Never have enough, especially a guy like him. He took a pay cut to stay in Toronto. He wanted to stay there. He sees what's going to happen there. He's excited about it. I'm excited for him. Character guy. I'll never forget when he played in Vancouver. He was a really good college player at North Dakota. His father passed away when he was playing in Vancouver. I will not forget that. Tremendous kid. I know the coaches, every coach that's ever had him said the same thing. He comes from this legendary junior program in BC called the Penticton Vs, and he's a proud V, and I can tell you they think the world of him in Penticton. So he's a good player. He's a great Toronto Maple Leaf now, and I'm excited for him staying there.
All right, so now we can go back in time a couple of more days to the draft. They ended up taking Gavin McKenna, and really not too much of a surprise to anybody. I thought Austin Matthews having a video there, I thought it was very authentic. I thought it was a really nice welcome for him from the captain. Where does McKenna, in your mind, kind of fit into all this?
On the first line, playing with Austin Matthews. And if he's not there, he's going to play with Johnny Tavares. Don't play him as a checker. That's not his job. He's going to get points for you. He's going to be on your first power play. I'm not saying he's replacing Mitchell Marner, but he's going to be a facsimile close enough to that. I could see where they play him on a line with Willie Nylander and Austin Matthews to start. He's going to be a top six guy for them. He's going to produce a lot of assists. I don't know how many pure goals he's going to get the first year he's in the league, but he's going to get enough. He's going to compete for the Rookie of the Year. No question in my mind, as long as he stays healthy. Toronto made their team unbelievably better in the last month and a half. They really have. They've made their product a lot better.
I'll tell you, with Matthews healthy and McKenna there, and then Radish up top, I'd love to see, a power play where there's a lot of movement with the five guys they end up using. And I think McKenna, I've compared him to Kucherov in that he's a guy that can drive offense from the wing, and he's a guy that sees windows open and close very quickly. He's got a great eye for it. And so I can see him and Matthews kind of doing a lot of movement on that right side as left shots on the half wall, then back to the goal line and up to Radish. I think there's potential there for that to be a really impressive power play.
You are having one heck of a day behind the microphone, my man. You nailed that. So I think the biggest thing, EJ, on that, I would be taking, if I were Jimmy Hiller, and I know everybody, look, I've been in his shoes. Everybody wants to come up with their own schemes, but imitation's a finest form of flattery. You talked about Kucherov. Radish and Kucherov had this great chemistry down in Tampa. Don't forget there was a guy named Braden Point there, and there also used to be a guy named Steven Stamkos there. You can go into the archives and find some unbelievable power play schematics and entries from the Tampa days, And I would be not afraid to copy some of the things they did
Yeah.
down in Tampa if I were Toronto, because I'm telling you right now, what you just said is so spot on. I make notes all the time about different things in hockey.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I wrote. I said, if I were Toronto, I'd be paying attention to what Tampa did on the power play with Kucherov and Radish.
And they've got Nylander who they can put on the right shot on that left dot, who can hammer that one timer. So there's
Yep.
another, similarity, right? When they had Stamkos in that spot, the only spot I would think they got to try to fill is the bumper.
Yeah, and so that's where you just wonder, I mean, what do you do? And I think they'll find a way to figure that out, whether it's
Yeah.
Johnny Tavares or whether it's somebody else.
Yeah.
But I think they'll figure that out. I don't think that's going to be that hard for them to figure
Yeah, it
out.
just depends if they want a right shot in there, or if they want a left
Correct.
shot. If they want a right shot, maybe they can use Roslovic in there. He's
Yeah,
a guy that can
exactly.
score, so maybe he's a guy that you put in there. But the pieces are kind of falling into place. So, that's a good thing to see. I thought it was interesting at the draft too, Pierre, that they didn't have a lot going in. They made some moves to get some extra picks, and they moved Carlo out. I thought that was one of those moves where they ended up using that money to get in on some other players. I thought the management here of assets by Shaika, I have to say it as someone who was not, the first guy online saying what a great hire it was. I have to say I've been impressed with these first couple of months.
So what I said when he got hired is I never prejudge on anybody, because you
Yeah.
got to give them an opportunity to hit the ground running. And if they hit the ground running, they're going to do well. If they hit the ground and it's a thud, then it's a problem. Then you can start to judge. Then you can start to judge on them.
Yeah.
So I don't ever prejudge on any of these things, because I've seen guys where I thought no chances are going to be good, end up being good. And I've seen other ones where, oh, it can't miss, going to be great. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's a disaster. I'll give you a case in point. Who thought in their wildest dreams that when Glenn Sather left Edmonton to go to New York, that the Rangers would have this dark void of no playoffs for year after
Yeah.
year after
Yeah.
year after year? It was the great Glenn Sather. Couldn't go wrong. Well,
Yeah.
it went wrong in New York because it was a totally different experience than what he had in Edmonton. So I'm just showing you, like, I learned a valuable lesson on that when Sather left Edmonton to go to New York. I never prejudge on any of these things. I like to give people the opportunity. I think John Chaykas hit the ground running. Matt Sundin right alongside him. They've done a really nice job in about a month and a half getting everything up to speed in Toronto. It's an exciting. I tell you this right now, EJ, I'd be really, if I were a Leaf fan, I'd be really excited for the start of the year. Really excited.
You know what? You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you. I think if you're a fan, after last season and with all this uncertainty and, these hires you're not so sure about, whether it's the manager or the coach, I think you got to be really excited. I mean, you lucked out, you win the lottery, so you get McKenna, and then they've been active. They've made a bunch of moves, and, and now to Bobrovsky in goal. I think, even though, listen, it's none of this is set in stone. I mean, there's always risk to all these different moves, but I'm with you. If I'm a Leafs fan, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays out on the ice.
You know, you've done a lot of work around this too. There's been an arm race that's been created in the Atlantic Division in particular. Florida started it. Tampa's now following through on some of it. Montreal's a little late to the party. Boston's definitely involved in it. You see what Buffalo's done under Jarmo Kekalainen. Toronto's been proactive. The only team that's kind of fallen backwards is Ottawa right now in the Atlantic. Everybody else has been full throttle. And this is, if Toronto hadn't have done some of these moves, they would have been buried, EJ. I'm convinced of it. This arms race, if you're, I've said it for 3 years now. 2 years ago, I thought there'd be 5 teams from the Atlantic and only 3 from the Metro. That's how it played out. Last year, I thought there'd be 5 teams from the Atlantic, 3 from the Metro. That's how it panned out. This year, I think you could have, even though it's not possible, you could have six teams from the Atlantic and with only
more
2
points. Yeah, with more points.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
So it's just the Atlantic has become an arms race, and teams are still in their windows, and that's what makes it really hard. And Toronto had to keep up, and they have.
All right, so now we've had the draft, we had the first day of free agency. They've pretty much spent the money they had to spend, but again, there's still some wheeling and dealing that could be done. I would like to still see them address that defense if they can. We don't know what's going to happen with Riley. He was maybe going, maybe staying. Are you with me on that? Do you want? I would just like to see them add a little bit more speed to the blue line if they can figure out a way to do it.
So one of the things that I'm excited about, and I agree with you, by the way, I'm not against you at all, but one of the things I'm excited about for Leaf fans, Christopher Tanev is going to be back.
Yeah.
That's important for them, though, especially with Carlo moving out. That right side of the defense needs a little bit of support. That's number one. Number two, if it's true, and I'm stressing if it's true, and if they really are one of the teams that Zach Werenski would be interested in going to, I think they have to explore that.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm not trying to say trade this guy out or trade that guy. I'm just saying explore the Werenski thing, and I bet you they are doing that. If they get him, that's a game changer. You know, you've added Darren Radish, you've added Emil Andre, you're getting Chris Tanev back. If you can do that, I would do that, and that changes the whole dynamic of their group.
You know, it seems that that whole was kind of a roller coaster ride with Werenski for 2 days in Columbus. They were, he wasn't staying, and then they were talking about trading him, and then there was a trade to Dallas apparently that he vetoed, and then the
Right.
two sides got together, and now Werenski says he wants to stay in Columbus. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I guess just to hot stove it a little bit with you, if he were to become available, like I think, he was like, well, would I think you've got to be willing to go in deep there if he were to become available, because that's a pillar that you put into the ground that you build your group around on defense. So it's not unlikely that he is going to be available based on what we heard from both him and the club late on July 1st in the evening. But if a player like that becomes available, Pierre, I think for the Leafs, they really have to consider moving assets, because that's a guy or a player like him that fills out your group even better.
Let me take you to 2006. Brian Burke is running the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah.
And he goes out and signs Scotty Niedermayer because he had already gotten Robbie Niedermayer. So that's number one. Then number two, because of Bobby Murray, his assistant GM at the time, he goes out and gets Francois Beauchemin, who Montreal let go to Columbus. He brings him in. And then you talked about that pillar piece. Then he goes out and gets Christopher Pronger, who Brian brought into the league in 1993 with the second overall pick when he was in Hartford. Well, those guys went on 06-07 to win the Stanley Cup, and they were a murderer's row on defense. They beat Ottawa in 5 games. They could have beat them in 3 games. I mean, they were just so much better. It was ridiculous. I did every game in that series, and it was not even close. So a lot of respect for those kinds of players, those pillar players that I'm going to use that. That's an E.J. Hradek thing. Those pillar players in defense, they matter. Werenski's one of those players, no question.
Yeah. So, and anything else to wrap it up, Pierre, that you see moving forward from the Leafs, like in terms of movement? Because, like I said, I think defense is the area if they could figure something out.
Yeah, I think D's the only place. They got more than enough depth up front. They've got more than enough depth in goal. They might even be in a position where they could maybe move a goalie. I'm not saying they will, but they've already moved Hildeby, obviously.
Yeah.
Toronto's in a good spot. So I wouldn't be in a rush right now, but I think one of the things Jimmy Hiller's got to decide on, like when he talks to management, I'm sure he talks every day, like, do we have enough on the back end? That'd probably be the only question I would have. Do we have enough on the back end?
Hey, one last bonus one from you. What do you think is going to happen with Connor Hellebuck? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about Buffalo. I mean, what do you think is going to happen there?
Buffalo sounds like a likely landing spot.
Yeah.
They move out Devon Levi. I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen would have to be part of that going the other way. Obviously to Winnipeg. But Jarmo hasn't been shy. Jarmo Kekalainen's put foot to the pedal to the metal, and he's going after it. Buffalo's going to be a formidable force. They're going to be good for a long time too. Quietly, like you take Owen Zellweger out of Anaheim and you play him. Let's just say you play him in the 5-6 wall in defense. That's a heck of a transition player in the back end. He can really do a lot of stuff.
He can wheel.
And you look at Crevier, this is what I've watched Crevier play in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
And
big
people
guy.
don't realize he's almost 6'8". Like he's a big guy.
Yep.
He's thick. And EJ, I don't think people realize how well he can skate. Like he's a heck of a skater for a man that size. So they've put pieces together, and that Zach Benson contract, that's a really good contract. Like that kid's unless he gets hurt, that kid's going to be a phenomenal player. So that Buffalo thing is dangerous. It's really exciting for them. That Buffalo Toronto thing, that should be on national TV every single time they play.
Yeah,
It's
those
going
are
to be
going to
really
be.
good.
I'll tell you, those are going to be good games, and I think
Yep.
those Atlantic Division games this year, just like last year, are going to be fun to watch. And the best part for Leafs fans is that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be, I think, a player in all that again this year with
Yep.
the moves they've made and the changes. So we'll see where it goes. Pierre, thanks for the time, my friend. We covered a lot of ground today.
Never boring with you, my man. You are the picture of the NHL draft now.
Yeah, I'm in the picture on the scoreboard behind all the talking heads up there. Just I always say it's best to get me on mute. That's always the best way to get me. So anyway, Pierre, thanks for the time today, my friend. Have a safe trip overseas. I know you're headed over to Ireland, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. I can't wait. Thanks a lot, EJ. Take care. Enjoy the 4th of July.
Yep, you too. Happy 4th. Pierre McGuire joining us here on the Toronto Sports Rush. Remember, like, subscribe. We got plenty of content. We'll take you all the way through the summer and get you ready for the upcoming NHL season. Have a great day.